in the novel, that Dimitri begins by it's not Dimitri's talking. The narrator is filling in Dimitri's thoughts. Here's what Dimitri was feeling. Here's what he was thinking. Here is the motor. Now you're going to get a long Dimitrian Karamazovian journey in this book, and what's driving the whole thing is Dimitri's soul at the very beginning. So we need to read some of this to kind of see what gives him so much hope. This is about 2 pages in. If you're in the Peaver translation, this is on 365. It's the second page at the very bottom. Okay, so Dimitri has these like little fantasies, like, oh, what's going to happen when Katerina, comes back, and this and that, and then here's this thing. She'll suddenly tell Dimitri, "Take me, I'm yours forever, and it will all be over." He would snatch her up and take her to the end of the world at once. Oh, at once take her away far as possible to the end of the world, somewhere, if not to the end of the world, then to the end of Russia at least. Marry her there, settle down with her incognito, so that no one would know anything about them. Not here, not there, not anywhere. So this is Dimitri's hope. This is what he's living for. He's trying to orchestrate things so that that this comes about. Does this sound familiar to anyone else that we've seen in this book? Anyone else who has these great dreams of going to the end of the world, well, if not at least to the end of the world, maybe to the end of Russia, living there incognito, no one will know about them, no one will know about their past, they'll start a new life, everything will be good there, they won't carry this old past with them. Yeah, the good old whisk beard, the wisp of tow, the broom, scraggly beard, the Snegiryov, right, the captain, with the son, Ilusha, who bit Alyosha's finger. Remember that guy? And the father and the son, and they're dreaming, if we leave this town, this nasty little town, and we can go somewhere, and we'll leave all of our troubles, and it'll all be wonderful. We'll start a new life. No one will know us. No one will make fun of us. No one will yada, yada, yada. This is the exact same dream of Dimitri. I don't think this is an accident. This might be everyone's dream. This might be the human dream to the problem of injustice, the problem of sin. If only we could go somewhere else where there weren't these people that made me angry, I wouldn't be angry. If only I could go somewhere else where there weren't these people that made me spiteful and made me feel lazy. If it wasn't for technology, I wouldn't waste so much time. If it wasn't for these things, I wouldn't be like that, and this and all that sort of stuff. Right, so that the new life will come by cutting out the old life, and that'll be like what regenerates life. And so it's like, okay, cut those things out. That's the goal. You kind of see the dream. Does the dream kind of feel like a dream that maybe you've had, and maybe not in the complete physical sense, like running to the end of Russia to marry a Russian beauty? Maybe you haven't had that dream yet, but you probably had something which is the analog of that, which is only if you could cut out all that nasty stuff that you think is the problem with you, and it's all this external stuff, then you could start anew. The problem is, what if the problem isn't really external to Dimitri? What if it's not really external to Grushenka or to Snegiryov or Ilusha? They can't run to a different town and start a new life because you kind of carry your old life with you. Like you can't just cut it off, right? So this is why it's not enough to be reborn by merely forgetting your old life. Like, oh, if I forget the fact that I did X, Y, and Z, it's as if I didn't do it. You can't have a new life with that. Somehow, that seems to be the hope, but whether or not that actually is achievable you see here in this book, Mitya, it's not achievable. But let me keep reading, because this is just an incredible depiction, I think, of the false hopes that we all have as fallen humans. Then, a totally new life would begin at once. He dreamed of this other, this renewed and now virtuous life. It must be virtuous. Ceaselessly and feverishly, he thirsted for this resurrection and renewal. The vile bog he had gotten stuck in of his own will burdened him too much. So he's made his own life burdensome, which kind of, you might think, like, well, maybe if you go to New Life, you'll make that life burdensome too. Okay. And like a great many men, like Jaeger, in such cases, he believed most of all in a change of place. If only it weren't for these people, if only it weren't for these circumstances, if only one could fly away from this cursed place, or this cursed time, or whatever, then everything would be reborn. And that was what he believed in and what he longed for. But that would only be in the case of the first happy solution to the question. Right? So one way life. What's the question? The question that's tormenting Dimitri is, who is Grushenka going to choose? One option is Dimitri. She's going to choose Dimitri. What's the other option? Fyodor. She's going to choose the old man. She's going to choose Dimitri. This is like a rebirth. This is as he puts it in there, actually a resurrection. This is a completely new life. Happiness will be given again. He'll start over. He could start over. Over here, well, let me talk about what Dimitri thinks of that alternative. This is important for how you read the events of this book. Very important. Let this seep into your soul if you want to understand the kind of the depth of Dimitri. There was another solution. He imagined a different and terrible ending. She, Grushenka, suddenly says to him, Dimitri, like this is the other fantasy he has. Maybe this will happen to Grushenka. She'll say to me, "Go, I've just reached an agreement with Fyodor Pavlovich and shall marry him. You're no longer needed." But then, incidentally, Mitya did not know what would happen then. Until the very last hour, he did not know. We must clear him of that. So what would happen if Grushenka went to Fyodor? What if this were the option? What would Dimitri do? He doesn't have a plan. Why doesn't he have a plan? Because every effort, he's not hedging his bets. This is why I love Dimitri. This is why I think Dimitri is a good person. Now he's corrupt in many ways, but he is someone who knows that the only possible way to live is either hot or cold. There's no middle ground here. It's either all in or you're all out. It's either all happiness or there's no happiness. Right? There's no little bit of happiness. You can't live with just a little bit of happiness. It's either complete or it's nothing. And so he doesn't even spend any effort really thinking about this alternative, because he's completely convinced that the only thing worth his life is that first alternative, that first new life, the rebirth. Complete conviction in that. This is completely unplanned. He has no time a day to try to hedge his bets. Give a little bit of like, well, maybe here's how I could kind of put up with this. Here's how I'll put up with the situation if that happens. He's not going to put up with the situation. What is he going to do? It doesn't matter. He's not thinking about that. This is all he's thinking about. Okay. Does that make sense? A little bit. He is the perfect example, and this whole book 8, I think, is an attempt to show a man who lives in hot water or cold water, not lukewarm. He's not a lukewarm person one bit. He will go to the ends of the earth for happiness, even if it means like destruction. Even if it means a false happiness, he's going to completely give himself over to it. Because he knows the only way to have happiness is to give yourself completely to something. Okay. So this is what's incredible about him. Just a few more sentences to fill this in. Incidentally, Mitya did not know what would happen to him then. Until the very last hour, he did not know. We must clear him of that. He had no definite intentions. The crime had not been thought out. Right? He just watched, spied, and suffered. Okay? Preparing himself only for the first happy ending to his fate. That's only preparation, only like mental energy, hopes, dreams, all put in here. Right? But he knows this is an alternative, and so he's trying to like keep that at bay so that this stays alive. And the more that this seems to becoming a reality, the more he has to fight for this, which is why he'll do anything. He'll say anything. He'll make himself look like a complete idiot, right? For the sake of that new life, for the sake of that happiness that he so longs for. Does that make sense? Questions about that? Thoughts? Comments? Okay, but he can't just jump ship. With Grushenka, he realizes he can't go on her money. he has to go sort of on his own 2 feet, on his own money, and so he needs to get the money in order to take Grushenka away if she'll have him. And so that's what he's doing now. He's trying to get the money that would make it possible for him to fly with his own resources, build this with his own hands and bootstraps. I don't know if you build things with bootstraps, but you could if you want. If you're a cobbler, you could build your shoes. Yeah.
Does he not care about repaying the debt anymore?
What's really behind. So this comes in like a paragraph later. This is what's really behind with he needs that money in order to fly here. And what would make it noble is precisely that he doesn't feel like he is slighting or running from or taking, basically living this new life off of her pain. It's kind of like we can't start a new life on the money of someone else or on basically having squandered that. And so he needs to kind of repair that situation, settle all bets, and then the new life can begin. Because otherwise, I think the idea is no shame, no guilt, or no guilty conscience. We'll just put it that way. You can't have a guilty conscience. You can't be free with a guilty conscience. And we saw this with the mysterious visitor. He tried to live a new life after murdering the woman, getting married, having kids, becoming a full philanthropist, and donating money to, places, and reading books to his kids. And he thought like that would be a noble life. That would be a rebirth, a new. But because of this, it just corrupted it. It just destroyed it. And so the only way to have this new life is if he could like ease his conscience, ease that guilt, basically repay what he stole. And so he needs to repay that in order for this to be done in a noble, virtuous way. And so that's really ultimately what he's trying to do is get the money, which would make this possible, because then it would get rid of all of that. Because I think you see, similar to like the mysterious visitor, you can't just flee and ignore these things. You have to make good on that. And so he thinks repaying the money will make good on this. Yeah.
Like, how do you move on? Like, at what point?
Keep reading.
Yeah.
Well, keep reading the brothers. You'll see. You'll see. This is a story. Remember, I sort of said it's a story about resurrection. How do you go from being dead to being alive? And Dimitri wants that so bad, right? He wants to start over. The Snegiryov wants to start over. Now, it's with Snegiryov, it's not so much like a moral start over, although with the mysterious visitor it was. But with Snegiryov, it's just sort of, I think it manifests in just in an actual. They want to start a new life somewhere else, but it's kind of like, is there anything super unique about that town that's going to not be found in any other town where there's like fallen human beings? It's like the real thing that they want to start over isn't possible when the problem is a problem that's internal to human beings, because it's like it's not that I need to start this stuff over, it's that I need to like have a whole system reboot. Like I need a new life, not all of you other losers need a new life. So how does that come about? Hold on. I think you get it very quickly in the case of the mysterious visitor. It gets played out very long term in the drama of the Karamazov's Dimitri. You'll see it kind of most clearly in Dimitri, and the beginnings happen in this book. Okay, and because what happens is he finally, and this is like book 5 or 6 of this the reading for today. He lets go of this dream. Right? Remember the very end of the reading. He lets go of this dream. This is not possible anymore. Because what happened to Grushenka? She jumped ship. She's not going with Dimitri. She's not going with Fyodor. It's as if, like, Dimitri thought this would be like the happy life for him, and this would be the let's put it in terms of blessed life. This would be the blessed life. This would be the damned life. This would be like heaven. This would be like hell. And it turns out there's a third option here. An option that Dimitri didn't even conceive of. And so he can't really even conceive of his failure, or it's almost as if it's just a completely new thing for him. He can't think. He thought he knew how he would be unhappy, but it turns out that's not why he's unhappy. Right? It's just something completely different. So when Dimitri finds out that Grushenka doesn't go with Fyodor, nor does she go with him, like everything's out the window. His life is gone. Both the first option and the second option. It's like there's no point in hating Fyodor now. There's no point in like everything. Everything is just lost. Does that kind of make sense? And that's the feeling that he gets at the very end of this crazy journey. What I love about this section of the novel is you just get a lot of little episodes that are just entertaining, because you just see Dimitri. I like to picture Dimitri like a candle that you light at both ends, and it starts burning towards the middle. And as it gets closer, the heat from both ends start to like melt the wax faster and faster. And you can like realize like pretty soon it's gonna like snuff itself out. Like it just can't tolerate this, and it's just gonna like burn itself out. And you kind of get this sense that Dimitri is like that. He's like he's gonna work himself into self-destruction, and he's doing that, right? He's trying to seek happiness, but everything he's doing is kind of working himself into self-destruction. And it does ultimately culminate in a complete loss of happiness. He realizes that he can't do anything to make himself happy. Happiness is kind of out the window for him in a way. Yeah, and we can talk about why I think that's the case. But okay, I mean, we can talk about some of the details of. I mean, it's really humorous, some of the things that come up here, but we don't need to get into the details about the gold mines and all that, which is just a humorous scene. Any just big picture questions about the drama of Dimitri and Grushenka and maybe like the inner turmoil that Dimitri's going through. Does anyone have any questions about this stuff? Yeah.
So Dimitri sells his guns again. No, he wants his guns back.
Yeah, well, so he pawns his guns because he thought, like, I can't go ask for money if I don't have a little bit of money already.
But then he goes back to the man and wants.
And then he goes back and he gets it back, but
And
he
doesn't want to take his life because he loves life too much. But the guy's afraid that he's gonna
yeah. So here's what's it. So he goes back to get the guns, but what does he also have when he goes back to get the guns? He's got a lot of money and a lot of blood all over him. And you're like, wait a second. You want to get your guns, and you got a bunch of money, and you got blood soaking through your jacket. Doesn't look good. So something strange is going on, obviously. Where did he get all this money? Is one question worth asking. How did Dimitri suddenly, when earlier he had to pawn guns to get 10 rubles, and now he has what looks like to be a couple thousand? Where did that come from? Reading this, where do you think you're supposed to speculate the money came from? Yeah, the 3,000 that was in the little envelope sitting by Fyodor's bedside. Written on the cover of that envelope was, "To my little chicken, Grushenka." I think it's the technical phrase that he uses. But so I think you're supposed to draw the inference, whether it's actually true or not. The way that it seems to be suggested is that it came from Fyodor.
So he sells the gun and then he goes off to follow Grushenka.
Yeah.
But he knows at that point in time he can't have her, but it's
Yeah.
like he's
Yeah.
like, he doesn't seem too depressed because he's like.
No, because he's an awesome human being.
So he still has hope that he still will get Grushenka.
No.
He doesn't, but
No.
he still is like.
Here, this is it. This is why Dimitri is incredible. This is page 397 of this edition. It's a couple like I don't know, two and a half, 3 pages in. When in the sudden decision chapter 5, when Dimitri is talking with Fenya, who's the maid, Grushenka's maid, and he finds out. This is right when he finds out. Wait a second, Grushenka's not here? Because the reason he went to Fyodor's is because he thought Grushenka was there. Looks in, and who does he see in the room? Fyodor, but Fyodor is not looking like Fyodor. He's looking like Adam. Nasty, ugly, Adam's apple hanging down. And he's like, everything that's evil, everything that's loathsome, despicable, is personified, incarnated in Fyodor. And he feels this rage, this anger creeping up. And then you don't know what happens. Right? What does he do? All right, it's a wonderful little mystery here. And he then runs to Grushenka, thinking maybe Grushenka's back at her house. And then Fenya says, no, she left earlier, a while back, to go with this officer. I don't think we know his name quite yet. He's a Polish officer. And she went to Makroya to be with him. And Dimitri's like, where did that come from? That's out of left field. And he's completely blindsided by this. And this is the first thing that he says when he hears that news. And I think this is why this chapter is called a sudden decision. And I think this is like the decision that Dimitri makes, which is so epic, so incredible of a decision. He says, I'll just read this. That's human blood, and my God, why was it shed? So he realizes, wait a second. Why did I even smack Grigori in the face? Why did I do any of this stuff that I did when it turns out Grushenka didn't even love me? She didn't even care for me. And I think he realizes the one thing he didn't think about in this whole thing was Grushenka's happiness. like it's as if, here's how Grushenka fits into existence. She's either going to make me happy or she's going to make me unhappy. Both situations, Grushenka's here for me. Either to piss me off or to, make me the happiest person alive. But it's still me, both ways. And then finally he comes to this realization, I think, and this is what you get here, is maybe there's something else. Maybe I should stop considering how am I going to be happy? Because happiness is off the table now. I'm no longer concerned about my own happiness. It's as if he lets go of his life. He doesn't care about it anymore. And that's why I think over and over and over again through the next couple pages, he's like completely 100% okay with killing himself. It's like, what's the point of living? I don't care about happiness anymore. In an interesting sense, what he cares about is happiness, but not his happiness. He cares, and this is the sudden decision. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow, and you will understand, he basically says, there's this big fence, tomorrow I'm going to jump over this fence. But you don't know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. I won't interfere. I'll remove myself. I'll know how to remove myself. Live my joy, referring to Grushenka. You love me for one little hour, so remember Mitya Karamazov forever. So I think the decision he makes is this decision to like give up on his own life. Like I need to stop trying to make myself happy. And he then realizes his what he needs to do is remove himself from being a stumbling block for Grushenka's happiness. And that's why I think he's on the one hand kind of tempted by the idea of suicide. Maybe that's how I should remove myself. But then this other idea creeps into his head, which is the money that he has. How he got the money, we don't know. We'll see how he got this money. But all this money that he has, what does he do with it? All or most of it. Most of it. He spends it on champagne. Of course, that's what you would do. When you found out that you just lost the meaning of life, you would buy a bunch of champagne. But the champagne is for whom?
Grushenka.
Probably Grushenka and this Polish man, and all the people in Makroya and all that. It's basically like he's taken this money. How he got this money, who knows, right? But it probably didn't come very very painlessly. He has the money, and he's just completely giving it all over to Grushenka, not so that he can get anything out of this, but because he just realizes I cannot be happy. He needs to remove himself. So this is a way, I think, of recognizing what he's doing is something which is completely foolish. He's completely squandering his money, but not for himself. And he's 100% okay with death. Like death doesn't fear him. He's not afraid of that. He's not scared of it. And in fact, he kind of thinks it would be a way of getting out of the way. It would be a way of, as we'll get to this here in a bit, but there's a line in here. Yep, this is on page 406 of the Peaver translation. And he said, well, actually at 405, this is the same theme, so I'll read that and then I'll jump to 406. I've never liked all this disorder. Who likes it? 3 dozen bottles for peasants. And he says, no, I don't mean that. I mean a higher order. There's no order in me, no higher order. But that's all over, nothing to grieve about. Too late, devil take it. My whole life has been disorder, and I must put it in order. And then he actually says this thing which he said earlier, glory to the highest in the world, glory to the highest in me. And then he goes on like a paragraph later. Everything ends, everything comes out even. And he then says, I bless creation. I'm ready right now to bless God and His creation. This is like Zosima in a sense. But I must exterminate one foul insect, so that it will not crawl around spoiling life for others. Let us drink to life, dear brothers. So he's drinking to life. He's rejoicing in life, but he's not rejoicing in his life, because his life is foul. But he realizes he's doing something, preparing to do something, which is going to make life blessed for someone else that he loves, without any sense that it's going to be blessed for him. Does that kind of makes sense. It's really Russian. It's really intense. But I think this is the idea that he's come to. If you're looking for the reason things aren't going well in the world, I finally figured out what that is. It's me. If I were to be removed from the world would be a better place. And that could be interpreted in two ways. We saw with the mysterious visitor. There's two ways to die. It could be, in one sense, suicide, which is why he looks at the bullet. And he's like, isn't it interesting to look at the bullet that you're going to put in your brain? Which Pyotr Perhotkin is like, should I go call someone? Right, he's a little puzzled by this. But then sort of instantly Dimitri thinks like, no, I'm not going to do that. But he's completely, he has the spirit that he wants to let his life go, right? Without any self-seeking in it. That's I think what's so amazing about Dimitri here. There's no, self-seeking is not something he is engaged in anymore. Completely a foolish man because of that. Yeah. So I think that's why he's tempted by the idea of suicide. What comes of this is you found out if you keep reading, right? So you gotta stay in the book. But he knows it's his life is going to go the way of the champagne. It's just going to be poured out for others. Right? It's just completely because it's all. His dream is not possible reality anymore. So it's as if he doesn't care about his happiness. Okay. Any questions about that? There's a lot there. How about that? Yeah, maybe we flew through the train station.
Well, I was just going to ask if it was similar to like the mysterious stranger, where it's like death to yourself. You can answer that.
Yeah. That's at least how I see the situation for all of these characters. When you come to this realization that it's either, if you have these two options, it's either my happiness or my unhappiness, and then you realize, wait a second, I don't care about either of those anymore. It's almost as if, like, what's the point in living then? If it's not my happiness I'm concerned with, nor my unhappiness, then it's as if there's nothing about me. That's how you let go of your life. Like, I'm no longer concerned about me, which is, at least in the Russian context, you kind of got to be a little careful with how this is addressed. But in the Russian context, and kind of it's a way of saying, like, if you are living for your own self and you come to find that you can't be happy, nor do you care about being unhappy, then there's no point in living, right? You just kill yourself. And I think what Dostoevsky is trying to show is Dimitri found a third alternative, or is finding a third alternative, which is maybe you could live for someone else's happiness. And what that looks like is complete death to self, which is like, from the outside, it's going to look like suicide. Like, you're not getting anything out of this, and nor do you care to get anything out of this. It's completely self-abandonment for another. It's obviously a little bit different from suicide. Actually, it's a lot different from suicide. Because suicide, I think, is an isolating action, where this death to self, although it has kind of that same drive, but it's completely outpouring for others. But both are a form of death of self.
Is that why he's like not caring about the debt to Katerina anymore? Because he's got the money now, but he's like.
He doesn't care if he's. It's almost like he doesn't care if he's a scoundrel. He doesn't care if people think he's a bug. He doesn't care about any of this stuff. Like, because he's like, what do I care if people think all this about me? Because I think he's kind of realized, because I really am what they think. Yeah, it's intense. Here's an interesting point. this came to me. I read into things. Why do I read into things? Because it makes it interesting. Yeah. Real quick side comment. You can ask yourself the question, like, what's the point of reading a book? Or what's the point of reading anything? You could think, is it to try to understand what other people think? There's some of that there. But why do you care to know what other people think? Like, oh, now I know what George Washington thought when he was crossing the Delaware or whatever. He crossed the Delaware, right? Yeah. Like, why do I care to know that? It's a historical fact, but why does that matter? And I think one of the interesting things about specifically novels is the novels only mean something if they mean something within the context of your own life. And so unless you're reading into them, like reading your life, your thoughts into them, kind of putting more there than the author put there, then you're kind of missing the point of reading works of fiction in the first place. Does that make sense? So you have to supply things that aren't in the text, because I think it's the author's intention that the reader does that. It's like when you're writing a work of poetry or doing a work of art, it's almost like the intention is that the audience is going to engage their own active life in listening to it or hearing it or interpreting it or whatever. Because the point of art is to like engage the listener or the audience, not to have to be passive, but to have to be active. So anyway, it's good to read into things and say, I don't think this is exactly what Dostoevsky thought, but I think Dostoevsky wanted people to have these sorts of thoughts reading the book. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that's how the fathers read scripture, but we don't have to get into scriptural interpretation. Okay, but here is an interesting, I don't think this is coincidence. Towards the very end of chapter 5, the reading for today, when Dimitri's talking to Pyotr, who is the little merchant down the road who he borrowed the pistols from, he says, "Have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever stolen someone else's property, like right out of their pocket, right from them?" And Pyotr says, once I stole 20 kopecks from my mother from the table when I was 9 years old. I took it on the sly and clutched it in my fist." And then Dimitri said, "And then what did you do with it?" And he says, "Nothing. I kept it for 3 days, and then I felt ashamed. And I confessed and gave it back. And then what happened? Naturally, I got a whipping." Okay, and then Pyotr's like, "Wait a second. Why are you asking these questions? Have you stolen anything?" And Dimitri says, "I have." And Pyotr says, "What have you stolen?" And what did Dimitri say? I just love this response. 20 kopecks from my mother when I was 9. I gave it back in 3 days, which is exactly what Pyotr just told him. So it's as if he says, I did exactly what you did. So someone says, like, hey, have you ever done anything wrong? Yeah, when I was 6, I hit my brother. Have you ever done anything wrong? Yeah, when I was 6, I hit my brother too. And it's as if all wrong is the same. It's kind of like if there's a unity of the good, if there's only one good, such that in loving any one good, you are any one good thing, you're ultimately loving the good, kind of in its different manifestations. It's the different participations in the good, in kind of the Platonic sense. So that like what you see when you see a human, what you see when you see a sunset, what you see when you like hold your child for the first time, it's all ultimately all like the beauty of the good, or the beauty of God kind of manifesting itself in the icons that he's created, the creatures. It's as if I'll just put it as sin, or to steal, or to squander, using that term so similar to the prodigal son, against the good. There's only you sin, you squander, you steal, the same thing in all contexts, right? Whether it's you hit your brother or you murder your brother, whether you even think about murdering your brother, you're ultimately, since there's a unity of the good, maybe there's different degrees of severity. So I'm not saying there's like a flat equalness of all this, because there could be different degrees of severity of the good as well. But it's all ultimately one good. that all these things have a participation in. And I think you could recognize something similar here with the rejection of the good. There's only one way to reject the good. And so if this is a rejection of the good, or a denial, or a turning of the good, or a squandering of the good, then it's all the same in a way. Maybe different degrees of doing it, different manifestations of doing it, but it all means the same thing. It all means, what does all this mean? To steal, sin, squander against the good. It all means rebellion. It's all different ways of rebelling against the good. I think this just, once again, harkens to that idea we've seen many, many times with Zosima, that all are responsible for all. Right? And I think there's a way to recognize the unity of the good with the corresponding unity of the rejection of the good. If there's unity of good, then the rejection of different goods is going to be ultimately have that same unity as well. So, okay, keep going. It's as I tell my kids when I read them books, it's getting good.